Hello and welcome to the Untitled Anarchist Seagull channel. I'm your host, an Untitled Anarchist Seagull called Elise. And this is where we understand that reactionary and liberal shites are a dime a dozen on the internet, but only one can deliver the keynote address at the Last JabroniCon. And I've got all sorts of shites to look at today. There's a whole collection of them. I mean, for one thing, it turns out I decided to have a look at those ghouls over at PragerU, just to see what they were getting up to. And guess who we found? Remember, anti-imperialist maverick Tulsi Gabbard is over on PragerU. Some of us were unshocked by this, but other people I remember spent years insisting that she was the face of anti-imperialism in the U.S. establishment, and are no doubt shocked by this. Although a lot of them probably followed her to PragerU as well. We've also got some Pim Tool bullshit. Support of Hamas and Antifa is destroying Democrats. Americans are rejecting extremism. That is his interpretation about. I haven't watched it. I don't watch these in advance for the most part, but I'm guessing that is his interpretation of why nobody likes Biden, because Biden is such a radical leftist extremist who just loves that Hamas. Then we've also got the rest of. Let's see. No, actually, we actually really saw the whole thing. He just veered off into some other bullshit. We've got, and speaking of reactionary shites, we got Destiny, Stephen Organelle. Politics on Twitch has become insane. And then in just the more general bullshit, we've got billionaires won't accept girls' goth look. Darman bullshit. I mean, and they've really captured the class struggle right there. I mean, that's at the heart of what's going on. I mean, everybody's got the goth look and billionaires don't want it. You have to have a revolution to get the billionaires to want our goth look. So, and then there's also Dennis Prager, the original PragerU ghoul. On the day Hamas surrenders, this will happen. And there's a picture of like people shaking hands, because I guess that's like the people doing the genocide shaking hands, because they get to do it without having their fucking Makava tanks blown up. I mean, not so much blown up, but having holes blown in them. Hey, Adria, bonsoir. Well, Pim Tool's on his bullshit. I'm sure you'll be shocked to find out. Let's find out. It's a shorty. We'll start out with it. Why not? Got time.
Christopher Rufo has this Harvard caps.
Oh, Christopher Rufo. He's the guy who has invented all of the bullshit the right-wing dipshitosphere pretends spontaneously to be angry about. Like, he's the one who invented the groomer libel, where you call all queer people groomers. And he was so fucking arrogant about that one. He actually explained how, on his Twitter feed at the time, how, obviously it's a lie, but if you manipulate words enough, then you can pretend that you believe it. He's the guy who invented pretending to be angry about critical race theory. He's undoubtedly part of why Tim Pool suddenly pretends to care about anti-Semitism. No, Weedlord left a long time ago. There was some sort of dispute over funding. Weedlord's got his own thing now. Now it's Moonlord and, like, various other shitty people.
Christopher Rufo has this Harvard caps.
Okay. Christopher, no wonder. You wonder why, Yeah, Tim Pool is suddenly pretending that anti-Semitism is, that he actually opposes it, while in reality being a big fan of it and a big purveyor of it. Of course, Christopher Rufo is here. The pro-Hamas faction is a disaster for the left, capital L. The campus protesters, Palestinian Authority, which remember is an agency of the Israeli government, Antifa and Hamas are 4 out of the 5 least popular institutions in a recent Harvard-Harris poll. Like, wait a second. What are the options? What were, like, the institutions that they had here? Okay. I'm gonna pull this thing up. Yeah, except he's not as good at it. Okay, Harvard-Harris poll institutions. Yes, but first there's a poll that's been mentioned. Let me see. Most favored. Find this. I want to actually look at what it says. We're going to talk about polls. For one thing, it's good to get in the habit of actually looking at the polls themselves and not just believing the interpretation that you'll see in headlines and things like that. Because basically all the important findings get completely omitted or distorted. So, but wait, yeah. But where are the fucking results? Hang on. Okay, key results. There we go. Let's see. I'm gonna put this up on screen once I find the bit we're trying to look at, because that tweet there is just too. The text is too small. It's giving me a headache. Hey, River Rune. Good to see you. Like, okay, but where's the results? Okay, it's a P. Yeah, okay, it's a PDF. Is this the one? Almost 1 in 2 voters say their personal financial situation is getting worse. Okay, let me just get this up on. Let me just make sure this is legible. Okay. So, 1 in 3 voters say the U.S. economy is on the right track. 1 in 3. That's not a whole lot. And I will be very interested. They will have data tables that will break this down by demographics. Okay. Let's see. Okay. 1 in 2 voters almost say their personal financial situation is getting worse. I'm going to just drop this thing over into chat so you can look at what I'm looking at closer up if over half of voters say their personal economic situation is only fair or poor right now. And that's voters. Let's remember voters is as a category actually will weight this will bias it in favor of people who are better off. Voters as a group tend to be better off than non-voters. Biden's approval remains at 44%. Half approve of okay. Handling of Israel, immigration, and inflation remain low. Like, okay, what that, and this is one of the annoying things. This is why a lot of these polls you could read a lot of things into. Like, what does handling of immigration mean? Does it, like, you could listen, and I can tell you, since I used to administer polls like this, not this one specifically, but other ones, when people will query you and say, what the hell does it mean, his handling of immigration? The response you're supposed to give is however you understand that question. But the thing is, that means that handling of immigration being bad could mean that you don't like the concentration camps and the breaking up the families and all the fucked up shit that they're doing at the border. And it could also mean that you don't think that enough of that is going on. It is really a useless question. Let me see. Okay, approval rating of the of what they call the Israel-Hamas conflict peaked at 45% back in October. Or no, that's November. And right now it's at 36%. That's among voters again. See, here's a reason to question this poll right here. A majority of voters say they approve of the job Trump did as president. Like, if you remember, Trump's approval ratings were historically low. So this is already an indication of a certain amount of bias. That sounds like you have an oversampling of Trump supporters, because that is actually a very small group. So that's a useful thing to know, although they would also be oversampled just by sampling the specific group of voters. Nobody likes Congress. Okay, the highest net favorability are enjoyed by Elon Musk, R. Fuck Jr., and Tim Scott. And what is that net favorability? The net favorability, okay, so Trump's favorability in this poll is 50%. Elon Musk's is like, let's see, 48. And R. Fuck Jr. is 46. So, like, none of the people that they listed managed to break 50%. Okay, here we go. Here's the one that Tim Pool is looking at. U.S. military, the police, and the FBI are the most favored institutions in the country. That sounds really impressive. The question is, what does that favorability mean? Okay. And again, they talk about voters as if that is not a politically distinct group, but it is a politically distinct group. The category of voters skews towards the right. Both because it skews towards people with more money, and because it skews towards people who actually believe in these institutions enough to actually legitimize them with their votes. So the U.S. military actually managed 42% very favorable, 41% favorable. Cops, 31% very favorable, 44% favorable. And the feds manage, let's see, 36%. What's really weird is, okay, this is the most favored institutions in the country, and apparently China is an institution in the country. Did you know that China is an institution in the U.S.? I mean, I guess it fits since Israel is just fucking a subdivision of the U.S. government, and the Palestinian Authority is a subdivision of the fucking of the Israeli government. I guess that is an institution in the country. Campus protesters are an institution in the country. Let's see. Yeah. So now, of course, the more you'll notice here as well, if you look towards the bottom, it's all things that get shat on in the media. I mean, if anything, and in fact, what you can see here is the more something gets shat on in the media, the less popular it is on this poll amongst people who are more likely to trust at least some institutions, in some like official regime institutions. Okay, so that's what we're looking at here.
Harvard-Harris Caps poll. The pro-Hamas faction is a disaster for the left. The campus protesters, Palestinian Authority, Antifa, and Hamas are 4 out of the 5 least popular institutions.
Like, okay, the other thing to keep in mind, one thing that is important as a reality check with polls is to actually compare them to other polls. Like, for example, when you have 60% of the population opposing the genocide in Gaza and 80% of people who vote for Democrats opposing it, then the fact that you get such low favorability on something like campus protesters does rather suggest that you are getting some sampling bias in there.
In a recent Harvard-Harris poll, take a look at this. Favorability of institutions. I love that Antifa is considered an institution.
An institution.
No, it's just an ideology, they told us.
Literally,
Well, yes, well, so of course, that's where they immediately go. Since the Harvard-Harris poll calls Antifa an institution, just that means that that's the proof that it's actually a big centralized organization.
they're considered terrorists.
Antifa is below China. The Palestinian Authority is above China. I love this. Take a look at this. The U.S. military, very favorable. I mean, you're talking 83% favorability with 42% very favorable.
And again, I mean, this is one that actually does show the efficacy of propaganda, because when was the last time you saw, like, any kind of story that made the U.S. military look unfavorable in the dominant regime media again?
Very few people are upset with the U.S. military. Police, look at this one, 75% favorability, only 20% unfavorable.
Wait, okay, let me just... Well, he's leaving out the don't know.
The FBI actually enjoys 56% favorability. That's actually quite amazing. But you go down, Ukraine and Israel, very favorable. U.S. Supreme Court, DOJ, even Fox News.
Yeah, like
Fox News.
Yeah, and once again, that is a reason to suspect sampling bias.
Wow.
there's a lot of people on Twitter that think that like Israel's like really unpopular and that like
Yeah, in fact, there's lots of polls that indicate Israel is really unpopular right now, particularly amongst Democrats.
oh, the Israel's going to be the thing that's going to we're going to stop supporting Israel. The U.S. is going to blah blah blah. You're wrong. Like whether you may feel that way, and you're completely justified in having your opinions, but it is not unpopular. The U.S.
Wow, there's one poll, and it's specifically amongst voters. So, like, all the people who say that, like, pretty much all the people who say they're not voting for Biden over this, they're not represented in this poll. And let's remember, voters, we're already talking about roughly 60% of the electorate. 1/3 of the electorate is non-voters.
U.S. still generally looks at Israel and says they're allies and we should support them.
Look at MSNBC. This one's hilarious.
That's awesome.
MSNBC, deeply unfavorable. Way down the bottom. MAGA Republicans are above MSNBC. That's all you need to know.
Well, that is really actually kind of impressive. Oh, of course he has. Which is really hilarious because the last time he did that, they started talking about wanting to drop him out of a helicopter.
Take that, Rachel Maddow.
Campus protesters are just above the Palestinian Authority in terms of unfavorability, then China, Antifa, and Hamas. I don't know how Joe Biden is able to recover from this. The Democratic Party...
Well, that's such a weird take again, because Joe Biden has very strongly been on the side of crushing the campus protests and exterminating the Palestinians.
is divided. The general population despises Hamas, Antifa, and China. The campus protesters are deeply despised.
Biden said Biden campaigned on the idea of rounding up all anarchists and locking us up.
And Joe Biden's trying to court them.
No,
he's going to he's going to colleges and giving these speeches.
Yeah, and getting protested because the speeches are fucking pro-Israel speeches.
He's trying to win them over. He is basically telling the majority, I don't care about you, I care about this fringe minority of weirdos.
The funny thing about this is that that's actually true, but it's exactly the opposite.
And even after a
It's the
decade
other way
of
around. Like, what he said is not wrong. There is a minority who think that this genocide is a wonderful idea, and particularly amongst the people who are likely to vote for him, they're a small minority, and that's who he's courting.
decade, but 4 or 5 years of ACAB, the police still generally have a favorable opinion by the
because it's all fake.
Yeah, it really is. It's all internet stuff.
That's so cute, because Tim Pool's whole take at the time was, we're in a civil war, and now it's like, oh, it's all fake. It never happened.
Twitter's not real life as much as it's fun.
Yeah, Tim Pool has a lot of followers on Twitter, and he paid a lot of good money for them. Don't be dissing his Twitter followers just because they all say sexy links in bio.
Older people who are not on social media and are still watching cable news are a part of these polls, and they vote.
Yeah.
But I'm willing to bet when you're
Yeah, I mean, actually, I hate to say this, but yeah, that's another reason, once again, that these but actually what he's saying here is another reason these polls are actually, this poll in particular, this poll specifically of voters, is raising a few red flags.
average 35-year-old.
He's nobody special, I mean, and don't look in his refrigerator. Not that there's any body parts in it, but there probably is body parts in it.
Is 70. These polls are going to look nuts.
Okay, I'm very curious. There's let's check out these let's check out the breakdown of. Like, just over half of voters say Trump has committed crimes, and they are split over whether he is a threat to democracy, is a headline. If you've got this open, this is page 38 of 66. I'm trying to find the data tables. Yeah, I mean, here's a wonderfully non-biased question. In this conflict, do you support more Israel or more Hamas? Like, I mean, and here's a question that is just allows you to gauge knowledge. Do you think Israel is trying to avoid civilian casualties in fighting its war against Hamas? Or, this is page 46, not trying to avoid such casualties. I mean, they've openly said they're not. Like, if you're paying any attention at all, then you would be well aware they're not. I mean, like, they openly say so. See. where are the... Usually if you, towards the end, you will find data tables. But I'm not finding them here. They must be separate. Because I want to see the demographic... You know, on serious polls, you will find the demographic breakdown of answers, and that tells you a lot. Hello, Adam. How you doing? Okay, cross tabs, key results. Let's see. Have we got... I'm trying to find the data tables in this thing. I like to look at the... That it tends to be more useful than the processed results, because then you can actually look at specific demographics a little bit more clearly. Okay. So, demographic breakdown. Age 18 to 34, 26%, 35 to 49, 24%, 50 to 64, 28%, 65 plus 22%. And let me just see, age demographics and US bond. Okay, 52% female, yeah, 48% male. Okay. Overwhelmingly people with either a high school degree to less than a 4-year college degree. They do not, okay, they treat Hispanic as a monolith, so they would not be distinguishing, even though it's important, between Hispanic white people and others. No, okay, and in this ethnicity section here, there's absolutely nothing that actually specifies, like in this one, like the only choices are white, black, Hispanic, Asian, other. 37% Democrats, 36% Republicans, 23% so-called independents, whatever the hell that means. The urban, suburban. Yeah, I mean, and then political ideology. Okay, this is interesting. This is really interesting. Okay, of course, being a US poll, the only options are liberal, moderate, conservative, as if those actually told you anything. But in a population in which actually people who will outright say that they're conservatives are a minority, there are 14%. Okay, right wingers are way overrepresented in this thing. That does not entirely surprise me. I mean, that's like, okay. This is font is killing me. Here, you look. This is. I'm gonna just drop this link in here. You can see what I'm looking at here. Anyone, these are actually the demographic breakdowns of the questions. Let's see. Trying to find. Okay, So the favorable view of person or group. Cops. Okay, let's see. All respondents. Okay, summary of very unfavorable, unfavorable. Summary of very favorable or favorable. That's what we want. Who are we looking at here? This is page 46 of 186 on that file I just put on here. Okay, so 18 to 24, it's only 62% view it, the military favorably. Interestingly. Yeah. I mean, that one is fairly broadly well thought of in general. That's not surprising. In the U.S., an actual negative view of the U.S. military is not exactly something that people are given all that much information on. Okay. Now, let's see. Favorable on Israel. The 18-20 in the 18 to 24 demographic, it's 26% are favorable on Israel. Let's see. The only ethnic group that is more than 50% favorable on Israel is white people. Everybody else, it's like 45, 42, 48%. Now, let's see. People who identify as Democrats, it's 41% of people who identify as Democrats view Israel favorably in this poll. Yeah. I mean, when you break this down and you actually start to look at specific demographics, you look at these answers by demographic, a lot of this narrative starts to break down.
The older generation.
Because the way this looks the way this looks in these executive summaries, which is why I don't usually bother with them for the most part, and headlines and dickheads like Pim Tool, is they will act like this, like these headline figures are are just a summary that is cuts across groups. Like all demographics view share this view. It's just an accurate representation cutting across everyone, and of course it's not true. Like in particular for what Tim Pool is talking about here, like if anything, Israel is way less popular with even in this poll. Israel is way less popular with Biden's voters than with Biden himself.
Generation right now that is not on social media. So we're talking Gen Xers who are not as active on social media as millennials, and then Gen Z, still active though. Boomers who are not nearly as active, and if they are, they're on Facebook pages where they're sharing, these silly memes where like a pig has wings and it's like he goes like they're just silly things. There's like I see weird Facebook memes that they get shared by a lot of boomers where it's like Jesus holding a pig and it's just like no, but for real.
Boomers have their own memes.
They
Crazy.
do. And it's just like in all caps saying, pray and he will save. And like, they're really, like they use all caps a lot. When the older generations that don't use the internet as much are gone, you will see the police numbers change. So,
actually, let's see. That's another one to look at here. Police. This is the summary of favorable. Summary of favorable, unfavorable. Where are the cops? Okay, cops. Here we go. Summary of favorable and very favorable for cops. Okay. Okay. Male overall 80%, female overall. This is page 46 again. And let's see. In the 1824 set, it's only 58%. In this poll, which we've already established does oversample from right wingers. 25 to 34, 65. Now let's see. Shockingly, white people have the highest favorable rating of the cops. And their only income threshold on this thing is 75K or more or less than 75K, which is kind of ridiculous. Like, okay, how many people make more than 75K in the US? Okay. What percentile is let me ask that a different way. Okay, so 20.7, 37, 4. Okay.
So if you're looking at silent generation, boomers, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, and you ask them about police, yeah, you're going to get 75% favorability.
In this poll, yes, in this poll. But the thing is, there are other polls, it turns out.
Silent generation and boomers pass on. And then you've got Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, and I don't even know what's after Alpha. But that's, you then ask them,
obviously.
Millennials are split probably 50-50. I bet if you look at the crosstabs on this and look at, age brackets, how did 18 to 29-year-olds say to talk on police? I bet it's...
I mean, and of course, if you look at the crosstabs, what you'll also find, again, is what we already saw, that this is massively oversampling right-wingers. Now, partially... And that's already, any poll that is specifically of voters is going to oversample right-wingers. But they actually did some on top of that.
It's going to be like 60-40 or 50-50. This means when the older crowd is gone, the weight changes and it will more reflect what you see on social media.
Yeah, I kind of assumed and I could be totally off on this, but one of the reasons that military and police are high, even though there are lots of anti-war people who are skeptical of law enforcement, the state, things like that, was because people are more likely to know someone who served in the military or is a law enforcement officer. So they're...
See, no, probably not. I mean, in fact, probably that would not help so much as you would think as some, a right-wing ghoul. But, like, literally, when was the last time any serious critical report, any serious critical adverse reporting happened on any of these groups? Like, there isn't a major, like, you basically could be forgiven for not being aware that the U.S. started a war with Yemen recently, and there's very little discussion of what that's entailing. So, yeah, I mean... people's view is just sort of the default because they're being told that because all they're hearing is that everything's fine.
There's a level of like, well, I don't like that group, but the guy that I know is pretty good. There's sort of a level of forgiveness that other things don't have. But police recruitment, from what I know nationally, is very low. And so,
yay! Yeah, and their morale's really low because people actually, like, outside of this poll, which again is sampling a bubble, the bubble of people who actually vote, and like within that oversampling right-wingers. Outside of that, actually, the police aren't as popular as this poll would suggest.
as
Right.
older, as
But
generation.
for these people, it's only the one poll. And if anything, they like won't even bother to actually like understand what the poll even says.
Corrupt, there are fewer people. I mean, military recruitment is extremely low. They miss their targets all the time. So we're gonna have fewer of that
Yay! More good news.
Positive association on a personal level that maybe people use to balance out bigger issues.
This is what I think people don't understand, right? They see polls like this. They see economic
Tim Pool's going to explain polls to us.
numbers, and they're like, the internet is not real life. Like, Twitter is not real life.
That's
or
literally what you've just been saying for 5 minutes.
X. Now it's officially X.com. And what they don't understand is that it's technically true in that it is not the universal perspective in this country or on the planet. And it is because different generations consume media in different ways.
Yes, it's like literally this is why the generation, this is one of the many reasons that I don't like to get into the whole generation discourse. It's just so pointless, because birth year does not tell you as much as the memes would actually have you believe, and all the like fucking trend pieces and shit.
But when you go on X and you see that there is a 50, like, there's no way Hassan Piker is ever going to say, yay, go cops.
Well, never say never, but I mean, why would he? Why would anyone?
Unless, of course, they're arresting, like, Sam Hyde or something, right? I mean, literally, like, the moment the cops go after the enemies of the left, they cheer for it.
You mean sort of like you cheer for them because they go against your enemies? And it just happens that they pretty much exclusively go against your enemies, so you're cheering for them all the time.
But Hassan's never going to go on his show to however many viewers he still has. I don't know. He used to have like 40K. There's never a circumstance where it's going to be like, hey, look, I think just generally speaking, cops are very good, and I heavily favor them 75% of the time. Never going to happen. His audience would be in revolt.
Well, yeah, but why would he say, I mean, does he think that that's how people decide to have takes? Is that how he decides to have takes? Like, and yet, you know, like, is that how he thinks this works? Like, people are like, okay, let's sample my viewers. Okay, I'm going to be against cops against today.
We then go,
but maybe people gravitate towards these creators because they share those views in the first place?
The internet's not real life. Only because his audience is...
The internet's not real life, and then he will treat a poll of his Twitter followers as if it's scientific.
Comprised of like 24-year-olds. 22... Well, actually, I think they were like 18 to 22.
Well, so still older than Tim Pool's
That's
audience.
Many of the left, they're young. On a show like this, majority of the people who are watching are like, I think it's 33. And then we have a recent uptick among younger 18 to 24. I think Gen Z getting the shaft is really starting to light a fire into them.
Yeah, but why would it light a fire that leads them to you?
And then we do have a lot.
You're the guy who cheerleads the shaft givers.
Of people who watch who are who are older for sure, but the majority skews towards the 30s.
See, I mean, and one of the things that you can always count on Tim Pool to do is every time they come up with a new name for a generation, so, he just sort of he decides that that's the one that's going to like him. You know, okay, so millennials were no good. Millennials don't give a fuck about him. Gen X didn't give a fuck about him. Gen Z doesn't seem to give a fuck about him. So we'll say Gen Alpha is doing it, or maybe Gen Sigma, and he will find I remember he got really excited about this poll that showed that nearly 20% of 18-year-old men in the U.S. Gravitated towards the right, and he was like, "See, this is the proof. This is the proof. Women are going to have to decide to like right wingers if they want to get laid, because look, 20%. Hey, yeah."
So when you're looking at the comments and opinions on this show, there's a lot of people being like, Tim has no idea what he's talking about because he's not.
Because he doesn't.
Talking about what I see. There's a lot of people who like to post online and they say things like, actually, I saw this on, I think it was on...
Yeah, there's a lot of people online who will talk about how Tim Pool does not know what he's talking about. It's when you bring up Tim Pool, that is one of the first things that comes up, that he does not know what he's talking about.
Gutfeld the other day. Bill Maher was on Gutfeld. It was kind of it was pretty amazing. He's trying to sell a book, so he's going every.
Yeah, it was amazing. He got cooked. He got absolutely cooked. I mean, and it was hilarious. The guy, just completely laughed at his claim to actually have anything relevant to say about politics, and said that his version of politics is just like a guy with a fantasy football team.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
And I think it was what's her name, Perino? I can't remember the Dana Perino. Mm-hmm. And she was saying, I love this talking point because it's just so naive and ignorant. But she's like, everybody thinks that there's this big divide, but you go outside and you see it's not really there. It's people are getting along, and it's like, ma'am.
Well, like, that could mean a lot of things, though, like people getting along, isn't it? But when you actually look at polls on issues as a whole, what you do find is there is a divide. But it's like the overwhelming majority of the population versus the political class. And the overwhelming majority of the population in these polls do not actually think highly of the sort of shit Tim has to say.
You live in a neighborhood where everybody lives in a similar standard, in a similar way. So if you're in the suburbs of Chicago and St. Charles and you go outside, you're like, hey, nobody's fighting. It
Motherfucker, you live on a compound in West Virginia.
looks like all that stuff on TV and the internet. It's not real because I go to my grocery store and nobody seems to be upset. Yes, because you live in a block that is, for the most part, more politically homogenous. But
again, like, Tim, tell me about where you live again?
But if I tell you, you leave that place and go to Portland, you're going to be like, did I just enter a war zone? In a completely different world.
Yeah, because Tim Pool, he's really up on Portland.
The remarkable thing that people think, I could walk outside my house and all of a sudden everyone's getting along. It's like, well, yeah. You live in a place that has common political views.
Well, no, probably not necessarily. I mean, possibly to a certain extent, but mostly it's just that most people maintain sort of a certain level of common decency, and we all have a certain sort of hypocrisy we all walk around with, where we kind of don't really acknowledge where, we don't talk about real shit in this country. It's part of how you can have a situation where the majority of the population on all sorts of issues think they're in some sort of weird idiosyncratic minority. I mean, that's a thing that's been broken down, actually, by social media to an extent, too. I mean, because now it's a little bit harder to tell, let's say, the 80% of the population who would like to see the back of the health insurance industry and have some sort of single-payer system, some kind of national health service, something like that. It's hard to tell them that nobody agrees with them because they're finding each other,
But you online in, say, like New Jersey's 1st District, you're arguing with someone in Portland. So you think you're a moderate. You walk outside and you're like, I see Democrats and Republicans getting along.
Yeah, I mean, who thinks that the term moderate actually, I mean, apart from the people who, conduct these fucking polls, and the people who write op-eds based on these polls, think that a moderate is a meaningful term.
Because you're in a moderate district, and then you go on social media, and some fringe far leftists is screaming their lungs out, and you're like, that's not real life, because I go outside. Then you go to Portland.
But, motherfucker, you're on a channel dedicated to having neo-Nazis scream their lungs out and act like you're the majority of the population. Maybe sit down.
Portland, you take a trip there, and you're like, this is where these people live. This is how look at San Francisco. It really is just very, very different in this country. And people don't understand that we used to consume media on a local basis. Even when you turned on your news, you were getting your local news station.
Admittedly, it was owned by a single conglomerate someplace in New York or LA or someplace, or DC. And was actually, for the most part, just churning out syndicated content, but...
Now people turn the news and it's all national level news. You go on Twitter, it's all national level. People don't realize your local community is not the same as every other community, and so they think everything's fine once you go outside.
Yeah, wait. They go on Twitter and they think everything's fine? Wow, what Twitter feed is that?
Then they go on Twitter and they're like, you people don't understand. But I tell you,
Nudes in
when the
bio.
older generation who consumes media at the local level is as soon as they age out, pass on.
Aging out and passing on are not the same thing, Tim. Like,
It
you
is
mean
going
age
to-
out of breathing? What are you talking about?
To be, man, I tell you this, younger people are not watching local news. They don't know who their city council people are. They don't know who their state reps are, their state senators. There is going to be abject corruption at the state level.
What do you mean there is going to be? I mean, there is. I mean, and why just the state level? It's everywhere. I mean, what you have at this stage of capitalism is just an amazing level of institutional capture wherever you go, to the extent that really it becomes a little bit silly to talk about institutional capture as if it were some sort of thing separate from capitalism. I mean, I'm reading this book on and off about Odebrecht, which is an infrastructure company based in based out of Brazil, but operating all over the place. And they are considered this. They're sort of an emblematic example of state capture. They had an entire department that was dedicated to nothing more than cultivating relationships with polis at all levels, to the higher the better, but at all levels, to just sort of bribe their way into the best jobs and stuff like that. And it's talking about this as a paradigmatic example of institutional capture. But the thing is, like, capitalism is institutional capture on a certain level, because you have a capitalist class who own everything, and you have a political system that is naturally, because of that existing like economic power structure, going to be more amenable towards them. So yeah, you end up, I mean, the term corruption itself is like actually, I think, of limited utility, because what we're talking about is just how the fucking system works. So much of what you could call corruption is just totally legal and considered socially acceptable. I mean, like, look at the myriad legal ways you have of just handing fucking large amounts of cash over to politicians in this country.
Because no one pays attention to local news anymore. It is only the older generation.
Well, yeah, but local news isn't necessarily even covering this shit.
Turns on local news to get their news. Because your local news station is going to report on Joe Biden. It's going to report on Boeing. It's going to report on these big stories.
So what you're saying is it isn't that people aren't watching local news, it's that local news isn't providing local news.
And then it's going to tell you about, I love this. I was in New York watching New York One or whatever, and they're like a water main break over on 3rd Avenue. And it's like, you're not going to get that news on CNN.
You know, but you're going to get it all sorts of other places. Actually, I mean, shit that happens in one of the major cities in the U.S., I mean, that stuff often does make it to the national news, even if it is very much a local concern. But, I mean, you think they're not getting that news? Like, you get that, I mean, I get all sorts of just local news on, my fucking Facebook feed. Yeah, I mean, there is no real local news at this point. You have just a handful of companies that own all of these stations, and it's cheaper to just not really talk about the local shit, except in the most superficial way, so they don't.
Why would they talk about a local pipe break? It doesn't make any sense. But you'll get it on your local news. Young people don't consume news this way. And so it's going to be really interesting.
Well, what do you mean this way? Like, like turning on the television? Because, like, there are other ways to get local news, Tim. In fact, there are ways that are much more likely to cover shit like this.
How this country becomes nationalized because of this.
I've
Nationalized.
a quick question for you. At the beginning, you started talking about how, like, the police
Who the hell is
numbers,
this guy?
as the older generations die off and you start to see like more digitally native generations do these polls. Like the police numbers are going to drop. One of the interesting things about this new
Well, I mean, if you even just did a sample that was not weighted towards people who vote and weighted heavily towards right wingers, you would see that number drop as well.
New York Times Siena poll that came out showed that Biden was like 3 points ahead of
exactly.
Trump with boomers, like 65 and over, so boomers and silent generation. But Trump was leading in these 5 or 6 swing states that they polled. He was leading by like 10 points.
Thanks for checking out this clip.
Yeah, except that, I mean, here's the thing. Trump is a historically unpopular motherfucker. Like, literally, it took effort to find somebody who would be this close to Trump. There are polls that were just out that showed that a generic Democrat, just, a no-name Democrat, like, so literally anyone in the Democratic Party would be beating Trump. Unlike Biden. But okay, that's the end of this bullshit. And we've got a number of options here. We can look at Tulsi Gabbard on her bullshit over on PragerU. We've got billionaires won't accept girls' goth look. That is some Darman bullshit. Let's see what else we got. We've got Destiny bullshit. Politics on Twitch has become insane. We've got las tres mentiras de la izquierda desmentida por la izquierda diario. That's Tipito enojado, and that's some right-wing bullshit from Argentina. What's everyone's pleasure? We've got half an hour roughly to go. How shall we spend it? Also, looking at a notification I just got from the Anti-Empire Project and the Gaza War sitrep. Apparently, it looks like maybe the resistance captured another Israeli death squad member. And I don't know if you saw this, but that fucking pier that the U.S. was claiming was going to be used for humanitarian aid, even though they could have just opened the fucking crossings and let it through. Yeah, the fucking pier is now floating away. So that's if that's not a metaphor for the Biden administration, I don't know what is. A fake humanitarian pier on occupied land in the middle of an active genocide, just up and floating away. But so, where shall we go? Hello, GGM. Where we got Tulsi Gabbard, we got some Darman bullshit. The class conflict between billionaires and goth girl. Also ich könnte, aber ich glaube, niemand hier spricht Deutsch. Also das wäre wahrscheinlich, den anderen wäre das wahrscheinlich ein bisschen langweilig. Also das würde ich gerne tun, aber dann... Aber gibt's was Konkretes? Also wenn es was Konkretes gibt, dann also schickt mir einfach in Discord den Link dazu. Ich gucke mir das dann mal an. Und vielleicht lässt sich da was machen. Das ist eine Idee. Du bist doch im Discord, oder? Falls nicht, schicke ich dir jetzt mal den Link dazu. Denn wenn du den Link hier schickst, dann wird das wahrscheinlich von Nightbot abgefangen. Let's see. We've also got Dennis Prager, the day Hamas surrenders. This will happen. Ja, also schick mir den Link einfach mal her. Ich schaue mir das dann mal kurz an und mal sehen. Vielleicht lässt sich da was machen. What else have we got? El capitalismo necesita pobre, video viral del creador de algo. No me acuerdo. Frat boys raised $230K after saving American flag. Mann oder Bär, Feminismus am Ende der Logik. Interesting. Ja, also ich bin auch findbar. Okay. I've been offered the option of a German language video. This is about, remember the whole thing where women were asked, do you want to, if you were alone in the woods, would you rather run into a dude or a bear? And women overwhelmingly say, actually, probably the bear. Well, Naomi Zeipt, who I've never actually heard of, but let me see, what else has she done? Get an idea. Oh, okay, she's fast. Skandalurteil Höcke. Yes, Björn Höcke of the AfD, the latest, like, respectable Nazi party. He said a literal Nazi slogan that is so emblematically, it is given in the official commentary on the Criminal Code of Germany as an example of the sort of slogan that falls under the offense of use of symbols of unconstitutional organizations. So, yes. And then there's die Lüge über rechte Gewalt, the lie of fascist violence. Yeah, I mean, so she's a Nazi. Okay, this would be in German, which could cause some problems, I suppose, for understanding. Chat, what do you think? Do we want to look at some German language fash bullshit? Or does anyone have any other process? I mean, I might put that. Also dagegen, dass es einen Klimawandel gibt, vermute ich jetzt mal. Nicht, dass sie gegen den Klimawandel selbst wäre. I'm gonna put this on the list, though. I might do something with this. Might do something with this channel. Anyway. So what's everyone think, chat? Okay, I will try to do this bilingually.
Stell dir vor, du befindest dich im Wald. Jetzt hast du die Wahl. Entweder du triffst einen zufälligen Mann an oder einen Bär.
Ja, also Bär, auf jeden Fall.
Für wen entscheidest du
Der Bär lässt mich in Ruhe.
dich? Diese Frage geht momentan im Internet komplett viral.
Also, sie versteht nicht unbedingt, wie man so einen Film dreht. Also, wie ist sie auf die Idee gekommen, sich so zu filmen? Also, der Kopf ist jetzt zum Teil abgeschnitten hier. Like, she does not have an understanding of the rule of thirds. And that is the thing with reactionaries not knowing how to do the rule of thirds. It's why we get to see, like, Glinner's nostrils and Caleb Maupin's nostrils. Like, I just, like, this is, okay, just a wonderful, shitty... Okay, so right now she's just talking about what we've already heard about, the man versus bear question, and all the dudes are freaking out because so many women said, yeah, actually a bear would probably be safer. That's all she said so far.
Denn laut der Aussagen zahlreicher Frauen, die in einem TikTok bei einer Zufallsumfrage auf der Straße geantwortet haben, möchten sie lieber den Bär antreffen.
Yeah, verständlich. Yeah, okay. Again, all she's so far all she's done is summarize the results of the asking this question.
Would you rather be stuck in a forest with a man or a bear?
Bear. Man is scary. With a bear.
What I've heard about bears, they don't always attack you, right? Unless you like fuck with them. So maybe a bear.
Ja, okay. We don't need translations here. Nee, also die Frage ist ja eigentlich nicht schlecht, denn die ist ja aufschlussreich. It's a revealing question.
Depends what man, but probably a bear.
Oh, 100% a bear, which is like terrifying to say, but
Definitely a bear. Some men are very scary out there.
a bear.
Naomi seibt, Naomi sieb, Naomi hat gesieben. Yeah, see? Bears are chill. I mean, I'd keep my distance, but I don't think a bear's gonna fuck with me quite so much.
Meine erste instinktive und vollkommen offensichtliche Reaktion auf diese Frage war, natürlich würde ich lieber einem Mann begegnen als
Naomi würde natürlich lieber einem Mann begegnen. She'd rather meet the man.
einem Bären, der mich höchstwahrscheinlich sofort zerfleischen und vernichten wird.
Ach, ja, also sie versteht von Bären also nichts. Das wundert mich nicht. Also da in der AfD ist man ja wahrscheinlich nicht besonders informiert, was das Verhalten von Bären angeht. She thinks that bears would automatically, just without provocation, eat her up. She really overestimates her flavor. I mean, das hier ist eine ungesalzene Kartoffel. Was will ein Bär damit, bitteschön?
Eventuell könnte mir dieser Mann sogar helfen, aus der Situation wieder herauszukommen und uns beide aus dem Wald wieder herausbegleiten, da ich keine
Yeah, you see, she thinks she sees a random dude. He would obviously just help her out.
Ahnung habe, wie ich überhaupt in dieses Waldszenario hereingedrungen bin. Und das sage ich nicht einmal, weil ich ein komplettes Opfer in dieser Situation bin, sondern ganz einfach, wenn dort noch ein Mann präsent ist in dem Wald.
Ja, aber, ja, also, mich würde dann interessieren, was für einen Mann sie sich da vorstellt.
Dann hat er wahrscheinlich auch irgendeine Intention dabei gehabt, in dem Wald sich aufzufinden. Und
Yes, she says, oh, well, maybe he probably would have had some reason to be hanging around in the woods, whereas she has no idea why she's there. That is a... Did she not finish her eyeliner?
und weiß womöglich auch eher, wie wir wieder herauskommen. Und da offenbar in diesem Wald ebenfalls auch Bären präsent sind, wäre ich schon da.
Ja, also sie dichtet ja alle möglichen Zusatzumstände da rein. Also, dass sie ja keine Ahnung hat, wo sie sich befindet, dass der Mann ja hingegen durchaus weiß, wo er ist und wie er da wieder rauskommt. Ja, also sie hat ja eine komplett andere Situation da also einfach erfunden. Also die Frage ja, lautet ja, also du befindest dich im Wald und du begegnest entweder einem Bären oder einem Mann. Fertig, aus. Nicht, du hast dich verlaufen, nicht, du hast keine Ahnung, wo du bist. Nee, also nichts von alledem. Das hat sie alles da also einfach frei erfunden. Und ja, also eins auf weibliche Hilflosigkeit da gemacht. Yeah, I mean, so she has completely rewritten the bear scenario. Like, you know, because the question is just, okay, you're in the woods and you run into either a random dude or a bear. Which would you rather? she has created a whole version where she has no idea where she's lost in the woods and she doesn't know how she got there in the first place. Which is kind of a weird thing to already. And then she says, and then she still like thinks that if she runs into a random man, so she she already created this fucking. She created this scenario where he obviously not knows where he is and how to get out and knows how to help and is willing to, and she is helpless alone and doesn't know where the hell she is, which is like that's not in the fucking question. Oh, we are watching some German reactionary bullshit. This is Naomi Zeit, who is she does Nazi shit. Basically. This is a request from GGM, and she's talking about why she would not rather. She's outraged because so many women would rather run into a bear than a random guy if they're alone in the woods. And she's created a version of this where obviously she'd rather have the guy because she assumes the guy's helpful and she is completely lost and helpless, and none of that stuff's in the question, but she just sort of rewrote it in a wonderful reactionary sort of bullshit way.
Dankbar, wenn wir möglichst schnell uns wieder daraus entfernen. Sehen wir uns einmal die Fakten über Bären an. Männliche Braunbären beispielsweise sind bis zu 550 Kilogramm schwer und 50 km/h schnell.
Yeah, she's just talking about their size and their speed. Ja, sie sind so schnell und sie sind so groß, aber ohne Provokation greifen sie nicht an.
Ist ihr
anders als Männer, anders als sehr viele Männer.
Geruchssinn 100.000 Mal ausgeprägter als der des Menschen. Männer, ich möchte euch nicht zu nahe treten und eure Maskulinität entwürdigen. Jedoch glaube ich, dass auch ihr es nicht unbedingt mit einem Bär aufnehmen wollen würdet. Und ganz wie es zu erwarten war.
Ja, also einfach wegen der Größe und der Geschwindigkeit und aus irgendeinem unerfindlichen Grund wegen des Geruchssinns. Ja, aber Bären interessieren sich nicht für uns. She says bears are really big and fast and they have a good sense of smell and therefore she doesn't want to be around them. And it's like, yeah, but that doesn't mean they give a fuck about us.
Weil Menschen im Jahre 2024 einfach so wunderbar vorhersehbar sind unter dem Einfluss des feministischen Dogmas, antworten die meisten Männer auf diese Frage selbstverständlich, dass sie lieber einem Mann begegnen würden als einem Bären. Ist ja auch vollkommen logisch, denn es sind ja die Frauen, um die wir uns sorgen.
Ja, weil Männer vor allem eben von anderen Männern ja in Ruhe gelassen werden.
Die nachts nicht alleine auf die Straße gehen wollen. Und
ja, wegen der Bären, weil es so viele Bären in der Stadt gibt. Deswegen trauen sich so viele Frauen nicht nachts allein auf die Straße, weil es Bären gibt. Also das hat mit Männern nichts zu tun. Das liegt einzig und allein an den Bären.
Dem kann ich sogar beipflichten. Das ist tatsächlich eine sehr begründete Sorge.
Ja, aber wieso? Wieso ist das eine begründete Sorge, Naomi? Wieso ist das begründet? Es gibt doch keine Bären in der Stadt, oder etwa nicht? Also Berlin hat zwar als Emblem, als Symbol ja einen Bären, aber Bären gibt's höchstens im Tiergarten. Also im Grunewald, so viel ich weiß, gibt's ja keine. Ja, wieso würde man sich da nicht mehr nachts auf die Straße trauen? Es ist ja bärenfrei. She's talking about how women don't a lot of the time don't like to go alone at night onto the street, and that's something she agrees with, and it's like, why? There are no bears. We've established that that's the only problem that you could worry about. Ja, es gibt's nicht den geringsten. Like, her eyeliner just ends. It's like there's a parallel dimension here. And then on top of that, we have this fucking this camera angle, this nostril forward angle. Like, has she heard of the law or the rule of thirds?
Jedoch, wenn wir uns die Statistiken ansehen, dann erkennen wir ebenfalls, dass Männer in der Regel häufiger die Opfer krimineller Straftaten, die
Ja, also Quellenangabe, Fehlanzeige, aber das ist auf Englisch.
Gewalt beinhalten, sind als Frauen.
Ja, und warum Crime in the United States? Warum gucken wir uns dann eigentlich die Kriminalitätsstatistik der USA? Also ich denke, doch ist das Deutschland oder etwa nicht? Ihr sagt das ja immer und jetzt guckt ihr euch die Verbrechensstatistik der USA an. Verstehe ich jetzt nicht. Und die Bären sind da gar nicht erfasst. Das ist die große Verschwörung unter den Bären. Sie haben es ja geschickt so eingefädelt, dass sie von der Verbrechensstatistik in den USA nicht erfasst werden. Like, so she's talking about this and she brings up crime statistics, and the ones she looks at for no reason that I can think of are the ones in the US. I mean, Germany has crime statistics. And wait a second, why are we looking at 2011? When was this? Why the fuck are we looking at 2011? This video was made 6 days ago. 2011? Wir schreiben das Jahr 2024. Das hier ist 13 Jahre her. Und in einem anderen Land.
Ja, die Angreifer sind zu 80% Männer. Das
Ja, eben. Eben.
ist ebenfalls wahr. Aber die Opfer sind eben auch in der Regel häufiger Männer. Das heißt,
Ja, das könnte ja auch damit zu tun haben, ja, dass... Also erstens, das war nur Mord. That was just murder statistics she was looking at. But könnte es ja sein, dass sich Männer eher in die Situation begeben, wo das ja passieren könnte. Dass Frauen diese Situation ja eben eher vermeiden. Yeah, oh, well, she's looking at it to explain why she would rather be around men. And because, as she just acknowledged, debunking herself in real time, that 80%, yes, men are more likely to get murdered, but also much more likely to be the ones doing the murdering. So, you know, but I mean, the bears aren't even counted in the statistics, because the thing is, the bears are part of the global elite, you see. The bears are part of the global elite. That's why they're not even in the statistics.
wenn wir sowieso keine Wahl haben zwischen einem Mann oder einer Frau in diesem hypothetischen Szenario.
Ja, weil es eben um die Wahrnehmung von Männern geht.
Andere Gender jetzt mal komplett ausgeschlossen hier.
Gender. Andere Gender. Also das ist ja Mehrzahl von Gant.
Dann besteht einfach trotzdem für einen Mann eine höhere Chance, angegriffen zu werden.
Ja, und was hat das mit irgendetwas zu tun? Was hat das bitte schon mit irgendwas zu tun? Denn es geht darum, wer... Okay, bear attack statistics. I'm gonna look up the ones for 2011 in the US, since for some reason that's what we're using. Okay. 1 in 2023. 2 in 2021. 3, wow, 3 in 2020. In Canada. That's... Wait, that is black bear attacks. Let's see, brown bears. two in yeah, it's a bearspiracy. Yeah, it turns out actually like using her metric, which is well, no, I didn't look at 2011. We gotta check 2011. That's the year that matters. Okay. In 2011, in the United States, one woman was killed by a bear. Another one in Canada. Let's see. And no women apparently were killed by bears in 2011 by black bears. So like statistically, if we're going to use these statistics, wenn wir also diese nordamerikanische Homizidstatistik von 2011 zugrunde legen, dann würde ich mich trotzdem doch für den Bären entscheiden. Denn also wie viele Frauen sind 2011 von Männern ermordet worden? Ich glaube, das ist wahrscheinlich mehr als von Bären getötet worden sind.
Als für eine Frau. Das absolut hirnrissige mathematische Argument, welches nun von zahlreichen FeministInnen angeführt wird, ist natürlich, dass die Wahrscheinlichkeit von einem Mann attackiert zu werden immer noch deutlich höher ist als von einem Bären attackiert.
Ja, warum ist das halt nicht hirnrissig? Das stimmt. Das stimmt, ja, eben. Es sind ja tausende Frauen ja jedes Jahr irgendwie von irgendwelchen Männern angegriffen worden. Und also in den letzten 10 Jahren nicht mal 10 Frauen von Bären angegriffen worden. Also das ist für mich nicht unbedingt hirnrissig, das ist hirnnähtig.
Attackiert zu werden.
Das ist also was zum Zusammennähen des Hirns, des rissigen Hirns. Da kann man einen Hirnriss ja gut mit zusammenflicken.
Jedoch nicht in einem hypothetischen Waldszenario, sondern generell im Alltag.
Ja, das stimmt. Es gibt nicht genügend Statistiken zu den Angriffen, die in hypothetischen Waldszenarien von Bären ja durchgeführt worden sind. She does point out we do not have statistics on bear attacks in hypothetical forest scenarios. Oh, Joe K, you're right. Bears aren't real. Bears are drones, actually. They're not very good drones. They can't fly.
Ich weiß mal nicht, wie vielen Bären ihr im Alltag so begegnet. In meinem Falle sind es herzlich wenig. Ich glaube...
Aber nicht, also ungleich 0.
Ich habe in meinem ganzen Leben noch keinen Bären angetroffen. Männer hingegen sehe ich so einige jeden Tag. Und das hat nichts mit meinem persönlichen Lifestyle zu tun, sondern...
Ja, das hat wahrscheinlich, also, dass du ja selten Bären begegnest, dafür aber öfters Männern begegnest, das hat wahrscheinlich doch ein bisschen was mit deinem persönlichen Lifestyle zu tun. Also wenn du also im Wald leben würdest, dann würdest du wahrscheinlich mehr Bären begegnen. Das wäre ein anderes Lifestyle.
Einfach mit der Tatsache, dass ich mit Menschen im Alltag interagiere. Und ja, der prozentuale Anteil an Männern einer Gesellschaft ist doch noch relativ hoch. Ein weiteres wunderbares Argument.
Ja, na und?
Argument einiger Frauen, die für den Bären argumentieren, ist, dass die Attacke des Bären deutlich vorhersehbarer ist.
Ja, stimmt, weil sie selten unprovoziert angreifen.
Und der Tod wenigstens möglichst schnell geschieht. Erstens weiß ich nicht.
Yeah, so now she's about to respond to the argument that bears tend to be a bit more predictable with the scenarios in which they attack, and they tend to kill you quickly.
Nicht genau, ob das tatsächlich der Wahrheit entspricht. Ich wurde noch nie von einem Bären angegriffen. Ich würde dieses Szenario auch sehr gerne vermeiden, weswegen ich eben auch den Mann wählen würde. Und ich habe schon einige Interaktionen mit Männern im Alltag
Also Vergleichsgrundlage.
gehabt. Ich habe mich auch schon in Wäldern befunden, in denen ebenfalls
She was in forests.
Männer präsent waren. Und das ist bislang immer recht.
Yeah, I mean, I love this because she has managed to completely not talk about what this is about. I mean, her entire argument breaks down to, well, you know, men were more likely to get attacked in the United States in 2011, and therefore bears are dangerous.
Glimpflich ausgegangen.
Are y'all realizing that myself and other women are saying bear because we would quite literally rather die? At least a bear wouldn't show videos and photos and dap up their buddies after. At least a bear couldn't say the words, well, she
What's with this fucking fun? Was ist mit dieser scheiß Schriftart? Hat sie nicht geprüft, ob die Umlaute da durchkommen? Look at this, like, she picked a font that does not work with German.
liked it. She asked for it. A bear would probably leave you alone even after you were dead.
Und gehen wir
Well,
jetzt einmal wirklich von dem dunkelsten und tragischsten Szenario aus, dass der Mann dich tatsächlich angreift, dann besteht immer noch eine recht gute Chance, dass er dich nicht einmal unbedingt umbringt.
ja, na und? Das ist ja nie, also, ja, was Besseres als den Tod findet man immer. Aber das heißt nicht, dass etwas gut wäre, nur weil es besser ist als der Tod. Oh, yeah, she's saying, well, you know, most of the time guys won't kill you, and so therefore that's, like, there's nothing to worry about.
Sondern sich an dir auf andere Art vergreifen möchte. Selbstverständlich möchten wir das ebenfalls nicht, aber auch das wäre mir lieber und ich hätte eher die Chance, über dieses Trauma, über lange Zeit und Therapie und Kommunikation hinwegzukommen.
Yeah, yeah, okay. I mean, this is just wild, and that eyeliner is fucking sending me. That what is like? Did she? Was there an emergency? Did the bear thing happen when she was in the middle of putting on her eyeliner and she's like, "Fuck, I gotta drop everything and make this video." I'm noticing it is time to wrap up. Thank you to everyone who has joined. Good to see you all. And I will be back next week at 11:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time for the on Friday and Saturday for the Untitled Anarchist Seagull channel stream, and at 4:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time till 7 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time on Hyperpolyglotting with Elise, on Friday on YouTube, on Saturday on Twitch, where we talk about the best and worst of YouTube language learning resources and play GeoGuessr. And yes, Riveroon, exactly. I have a feeling that if I look through what she has to say about, yeah, I mean, it will be completely different if she isn't specifically talking about white dudes. Because she's with the IFD, and I mean, they're kind of cool with violence by white dudes. That's sort of one of their main activities. Have a good night. See you soon.